Hello everyone, welcome to Cubird's Corner. Today I'm going to be telling you some of the books that you should read in 2025 and why. Since we're stepping into the new year of 2025, I just wanted to give some recommendations that I personally love, and I think if you haven't already read these, you should definitely be reading these in 2025. I know many of us are setting our new goals for reading books this year, so I am going to suggest a couple that I really love and that I think everyone should read. And I'm also going to be telling you the reasons why I said these books, because sometimes you want to know what you're getting into before you pick up the book. So these are some books to just really get into the year, and they are not published in 2025. They're not necessarily new books, but just because they're not new books doesn't mean you shouldn't read them. So I think that there'll be some classics, some newer ones, and some really popular books as well, but just an overview of a couple books that I think if you haven't already read, you should definitely read them in 2025. Okay, let's begin. So the first one is the Harry Potter series, and you may be thinking, the Harry Potter series? Everyone knows the Harry Potter series. Everyone wants to read the Harry Potter series, or has read the Harry Potter series nearly. But I find there is people who haven't read the Harry Potter series yet, and if you're one of those people, you need to read the Harry Potter series. I mean, if you love fantasy, if you love fiction, if you love literary fiction, if you love anything with good characters and a strong plot, if you love fantasy adventure, this is definitely a book for you. And there's thousands and thousands, probably millions even, of people that will recommend the Harry Potter series. So I'm sorry that I'm going to be one more of them. But I myself was a little like, why was this series so hyped up? Before I read it, I was like, is it worth it? I didn't know really why everyone was so excited about it. But then I read it, and I realized why everyone, since this series has been published, has been raving about these books, and so many people have read them, is because it's such an excellent book. The characters are really strong and the description's amazing. Like the imagination that goes into this book is frankly really impressive. And I just enjoyed it so much. I find that there's these times where I'm reading it and I'll just laugh out loud, and it's that kind of experience. So maybe if you don't really like fiction or adventure or any of those things, then you won't want to read this. But if you don't like fiction, adventure, or any of these things, I don't think you should watch this anymore, just to be frank. So, yes, Harry Potter series. Now, the second book that I'm going to recommend is a classic, which I don't actually have with me right at the second. So I'm going to be recommending Little Women. And I really do understand that not many people will like Little Women. It's an older book, and so the language is a bit different, and I think elementary age would probably not really enjoy this book. So not like the most entertaining book you've ever read. I personally find it very entertaining, but I'm also into reading things like The Count of Monte Cristo and other classics that can sometimes be really text heavy. So I understand that Little Woman's not going to be really the best option for everyone, but I am going to recommend it because I think it's a really nice book, and it has some really nice morals and values, and just it puts things into perspective too. For a book that just you can relate to, I think Little Women would be great. But then again, Harry Potter would also be great. That's why so many people love it. Like, true, they're in such a fantastical world, so different from what we experience, and yet they go through the same experiences as us, and I think that's sometimes what makes a great book. Okay, now for the third book is The Book Thief, which I do have with me right now. When did this actually get published? Because I know that Harry Potter was, actually I don't know Harry Potter, but it was a while ago, and then Little Women a long time ago too. But I don't actually know how new The Book Thief is. I'm sorry, let me see if I can just... That's a nice sound. Are you hearing that? Okay. Yeah, I don't actually know when this was first published or first made, but this is anniversary edition with new content, just in case you were wondering. I recommend The Book Thief because this, it was just such a fascinating perspective, and it was so heartbreakingly and well written, and there was just something about this book that made you like see the experiences of those people. But before you're like, what is this book about and why is the perspective so important, I should probably tell you the genre. The genre is historical fiction, and so it's based off of in World War II, but it's actually not in the perspective of like Jews or any of the people that were actually oppressed by the Germans. It's in the perspective of it's written in the perspective of death. So that's not really like, but the perspective that's shown is of children, German children living during this time, and then how they were kind of like helping Jews too. So it's really, really, really well written, and was really enjoy it. Like I enjoyed reading it, but it also really gave like a nice perspective. But the way that it was written, you had the sense of heaviness, but I also feel like younger people could read it too. It's not too heavy as in some other books can be, but yeah, this one was really nice, and I highly recommend reading this in 2025. I know I'm mentioning so many books from the past year, like 2025, stepping into a new year, and we're reflecting on World War II. But I think it's really valuable to see all these perspectives and all these different things, even though we are stepping into a new year. If we learn about our past experiences, we can improve the future. My fourth book that I'm going to recommend is Gone Wolf, which I also do not have with me, but it was a book that I read really recently, actually. Well, really recently. I read it in November, but it just affected me in a different way than a lot of other books I've read. At first, when I was reading it, I didn't feel like super affected. I was just like, okay, this is a normal book that I've read, and it's but afterwards I really got to thinking about it, and I was thinking a lot about it, and the ending too was so different than I expected. It was such a different see, I'm at lost for words. It was such like a different way of writing things, and I actually read some books like that, two books like that recently, where the writing style, like if you read it, you'll see how it is. The style of the story is so different, but the end was really sad. Just warning, if you don't like sad books, then don't read it. But it was really interesting. And then it's kind of a book that explores racism and loss, so heavy topics, but the author does that really well, I feel like. So yeah, I really recommend Gone Wolf. The fifth and final book I'm going to recommend is an older book too, and it's actually not a book, it's a series. So I only have one book of the series here, and it's not really a series that you need to read in order, don't worry, but it's the Redwall series. And I don't know if you've heard about this. I find it's not a very popular series. I hardly ever hear about it, but it was pretty popular a while ago. I'm not really sure when, but it it did have a lot of sales. It says on the cover over 20 million copies sold. But it's a bit of an older book. It's not really written in this day and age, but it's really not from that long ago either. I do find that like the writing's a bit more quaint and not quite like the writing style of today, of 2024 and 2025, but I really enjoyed it, and it may sound a bit weird at first, or not weird, um, just not quite thrilling, because it's about animals that live at an abbey, and they basically fight off other animals like big rats and things. And it sounds kind of funny or cute and quaint when you talk about it, but I found that it was actually a thrilling book and like a nice adventure story. I think there's also a little bit of quaintness there with the whole English countryside setting and living in an abbey, but it's do not be fooled. It is not just for uh, it's not just about cute animals. It's also about thrilling adventure and wars and all that type of thing. So the whole Redwall series, I've read all. How many books are there? Yeah, 22 books. I've read all 22 books, so I'm kind of a fan. But I have not read the series more than once because 22 books is quite a few. But the books do not need to be read in order at any means. I kind of just skipped all over. Each individual story is set in the same area, the area of Mossflower and kind of this world he's created, or not quite world, but world of animals, and it will have like some of the lore or like the same types of myths and same types of things. I can find it is a little repetitive sometimes, like the basis of the story, just if you're not that type of person who would enjoy reading the same format over and over again, but just in a different way. Maybe then you would just want to read one book. But I would suggest if you are going to start with one, recommend probably the, let me see, probably the first one. I mean, yeah, probably starting at the first one, but then the rest can just be any, because the first one is kind of setting the story of a very prominent figure, and kind of it gives a lot of backstory for the other books too, I would say. But some of the books that are actually set in like times farther past, I wouldn't recommend reading those first. So Redwall, the first book, Redwall, would give more background and would be able to make you enter into the series more smoothly. But that's only if you are going to read the Redwall series. However, I do recommend it, and I recommend all these books that I have just named. I know that some of them might not fit everyone's tastes, but maybe you could think about which one would be more suited to your taste. I know I've named a few older books on this one, but I do like classics, and I do think they are really valuable. And even though it may be hard to get into classics at first, it's actually really nice to read them when you are able to understand it. And I find that even just jumping into a classic where the language is a little bit harder, just trying to understand as much as you can find that classics aren't as boring as you may think. But anyway, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I hope you find plenty of new and great books to read in 2025. And I hope that if you check out any of the books that I stated here, that you enjoy them. Please subscribe and hit the notification bell if you're into that type of thing. Also, comment down below if you have any books that you think I should read for 2025, or just anyone else, because I could use some recommendations as well. And just thank you as always for watching.